Hello, and welcome back to the Awakening Philosophy podcast channel. My name is Jed. I have a new microphone. I hope it sounds good. Yes. Yesterday, we explored how to explore ideas, and we compared the debate with the dialectic. The debate where we fight to justify or use, reverse engineer, you could say, facts, evidence, and reason to support the beliefs we carry, which we have inherited, which we learned from childhood as part of the tradition based on the place that you were born, the time that you were born, the family you were born into, and the planet you were born on. Belief. To defend the traditions that need defending because they are weak. Belief. And that's also debate. We talked about how we would actually explore an idea rationally, step by step, in a good way, in a friendly way, not based on competition, but through the dialectic, step by step, with one person asking the questions and judging the answers. Because those who are ignorant or are wanting to defend belief will try and sabotage that process and give bad answers. So it's a kind of a skill for leading the discussion, or, well, I was going to say moderating the discussion, but really leading the discussion. It has to be a leader. So step by step leading, asking questions to lead through a structure called the dialectic, using key terms called the selfers, the self-logos terms, selfers for short, to explore the truth of an idea. That's what we are here for. The corruption of that is debate, just as the corruption of understanding is belief. Just as if understanding is our excellence we're here to develop, to reach our highest states of being, to solve our problems, then belief is the cause of those problems. So we also looked at the two triangles, the two triads, the triad that we seek, the functioning of understanding, as we just mentioned, leading to our higher states of mind, culminating in the peak states of mind, balloons, called the penultimate enlightenment states. And then, if you use understanding or use a dialectic to that, which Plato calls the idea, which capital I, the eidos, or the experience of the good. You can go beyond the experience, or in English, idea of the good, but of course not concept, capital I. So use dialectic as our functioning at the bottom of the triangle to that greatest experience of mind, to behold the good, to the good itself. Or the development of understanding, which we can do in time, to reach our peak states of mind, which are able to apprehend all of time, or the whole, to beyond time, the self. So to know the self is our ultimate goal, and that would be the ultimate state of enlightenment. So that's the triad that we all seek, and desire, and reasoning leads us to. That's why we can follow the logos, follow reasoning itself through the dialectic to reach it, making dialectic also the spiritual method. But the issue is, as we said last time, there are two things people are saying, what they're saying and what they're really saying. Or another way of saying that is there is the logos to reach the truth of an idea or the self. But we also have a different triangle, which is a distortion of that. Instead of understanding as our functioning, belief that functions to cause our problems via interpretation. And our negative states of mind, that are our addiction. We are kind of addicted to certain states of mind that were modeled to us when we were young, and we think that's good, and that's what it means to be knowing. And of course, this is the thing that people seek in their injustice or vice. To pretend to be a knower as you kill people for Donald Trump or Netanyahu, as you enslave people for Bezos and Musk, as you abuse and murder people for priests and popes and imams, as you clip chimp people, or as you try and defeat them in a debate. Cosplaying the knower. So, negative states of mind as a result of belief, and behind that, not the true self that we're seeking, but the false image of the self. So the two questions people are asking is what they're asking and what they're really asking, or what they're saying, what they're really saying, because we have both things on the table. So here's a triad of virtue, understanding, that's the dialectic. The higher states of mind, that's knowing, what it means to be knowing, actual knowing. And applying one to the other, or to reach the self. Now, the distorted vice, belief and opinion through interpretation, leading to negative states of mind and ways of being, and behind which is the puzzle that we are all here to solve, the puzzle of the false image of the self that we are identified with. That's the cause of our problems, and our life is to purify one and perfect the other. You've got to do both. And we talked about a debate where someone was trying to engage in understanding, and the other person wasn't interested in understanding, which can apprehend principles. He was interested in playing that state of mind. He didn't understand the things the other men understood, but he really liked being in a position of authority by saying, I believe what you are doing is bad. Now I get to punish you or talk down to you or patronize you, because this is his addiction. It's true for him as it is for everyone at certain moments. Now, more, of course, our job is to master midwifery and dream analysis to remove that. But of course, not everyone's the same, and that's where we are in the text. There are some people who are better. There are some people who are less addicted to this triangle and more interested in this triangle. People who are more drawn to understanding, more curious about understanding the self and the nature of reality. And there are people who are more blocked from that. The worst people hate understanding, think they know what self and reality is, and don't want to learn at all. Of course, conservatives, religious, capitalists, they are the big three. More interested in belief, identified with belief. Not, oh, this is an interesting belief, or this is an interesting theory I will test and I will improve on and learn from if it has any shortcomings. No, I am a Christian. I am a Jew. I am a Mormon. Keeping people stagnated in belief. Arrested development, baby brain. Seeking to imitate the state of mind that appears to be knowing, often imitating their parents or preachers, behind which is the false image of the self that they are here to address. So, we talked about this last time. The dialectic, we read so we can learn how to perfect the self-logos, and we reflect on our blocks, tangents, distractions, and apply the dialectic in an activity called philosophical midwifery to purify that negative triangle. And of course, dream analysis is our guide for both, which is also the dialectic. So we talked about this last time. In the text that we are reading, we have this represented, as it's represented in conversations with people, so too within our soul. We're also in this conflict between these two triangles. but also cultures. You can represent cultures. And what Joseph is pointing out in the text is there are some cultures like the Australian Aborigines and the Christians who are entirely in this triangle. They're all about belief. That's it. And there are some cultures like the Greek Hellenics who use their mythology and their stories as metaphors, as allegories. So their images and myths are not objects of belief. They are representations of true principles in order to help you reflect on them so that you can not believe them, but engage in them rationally. They recognize the rational is higher than belief and more general. Everyone can participate in reason, whereas belief, it's just, well, fucking horseshit. I was born in this family. Am I Jewish? Technically, your mother has to be Jewish. Who gives a shit? It's all made up anyway. But the Jews murder the Palestinians, the Christians murder the Muslims, the Mormons do their magic underpants weirdos, the Scientologists sue everyone. It's all conflict and war and division, whereas rationality is open to everyone. So we can use this to understand the difference between dialectic and debate. We can see how we have to explore both because the human condition is both triangles. As we participate in understanding, our beliefs will fight back. We have to expect and anticipate the counterattack. Some people can follow reason for longer before they get blocked. Some people get blocked straight away. Just the word reason triggers their ignorant beliefs from childhood. But everyone gets dreams. Everyone gets information on how to address that problem. To be rational, to be good, is to be Hellenic, which is to acknowledge this and do our best to remove our vice or injustice and perfect our virtue or justice. That's what it means to be good. Difficult to learn about because our society is ruled by the absolute worst people. Because while we demand understanding and never belief from surgeons, from pilots, from mechanics, for some reason, well, ignorance, we allow belief to rule politics, religion, and capitalism. So it gives a job for the most ignorant people to play out their ignorance at the expense of the lives of millions and billions and people, and eventually will lead to our extinction. So difficult to realize what it means to be a good person, to address this triangle and perfect this triangle. But that's why we have this channel, to tell the truth. We expect that most people won't listen or won't care because they have the opinion that we are exploring today, that everything is relative to beliefs and opinions. There is no truth. There is no objective standard. It's all opinions and perspective. That's the most common and most dangerous idea, which is why we're exploring it in this text. But also, people think they know the self. They take their image of self that they've identified with their whole life as themselves so much that they are closed from learning what we're here to learn. So that's interesting. And of course, the other problem, people would rather be entertained. But we have funny sound drops, right?
I'm eating the testicles of this bull.
That's funny.
Bull testicles. Bull
That's
testicles.
Oh, very handsome and or pretty.
That's sort of funny.
Hey, you can't say that to her. You show her some respect.
Don't know what that means.
He's so far up his own ass.
Okay.
You know what? Suck my dick.
All right. So kind of funny. Funny to me. So difficulty in sharing it, but it's important that we do, because this is what it means to be a good person. And also, this is how we explore ideas. If you're not addressing both the logos and the pathologos beliefs that block the logos, you won't be able to explore an idea. If you do both, you'll be able to go all the way to perfecting understanding, reaching your highest states of mind, highest peaks of intelligence, and going beyond it to know the self. Therefore, free yourself from the chains of your problems and the prison of reincarnation, to quote Socrates. So in the text, we're talking about how these two triangles are manifested in cultures as well. Because this triangle uses metaphor and analogy. So the physical world experiences, images, dreams, daydreams, mythology, we can look at every single one of them through the lens of analogy. What do the objects you encounter in your life, your dreams, your myths, what do they represent? Why are you running into this kind of a thing right now? That implies there's a intelligence creating and sustaining the world that we're in. The very intelligence we seek to know with knowing. Used by self. So, to be open to those higher states of intelligence and the self beyond even that, gotta start paying attention. What do the objects mean? As a metaphor. That's dropping the particulars and rising yourself to the level of meaning, or the general. What does it represent about justice or beauty? Now, all of those self-logos terms that we've been learning help us to do that. What does it say about beauty or justice or benefit or excellence or reality? What does it say about the ideas of same and difference, whole and part, like and unlike, rest and motion, limit and unlimited, out of time or in time? What does it represent if you can compare different expressions of the same metaphor? Is there a lesser version? Is there a greater version? By the way, if there's a lesser and greater, could there be an ultimate? So these are things that you can use to reflect on the metaphors or objects that you experience by dropping the particulars and rising yourself to reflecting on those ideas. Similes, what states of mind are you in? We talk about being able to map the states of mind you go through, and also anticipating the drop or the counterattack. With every insight or new understanding, you can anticipate your beliefs trying to undermine that with the counterattack. So that's simile. What's it like to feel this way? Imagine reflecting on your peak experiences, wherever you may have them, and wondering, hey, what's that like? What does that tell me about beauty? What does that tell me about reality? And allegory. Allegory is you can do the same, this development that you can map for your dreams or your relationships. Every aspect you can map to a higher idea. That's allegory. So the drama, so the metaphors are the objects, the similes are the states of mind, and the drama refers to allegory. So that's called being Hellenic, or philodianoia, lover of understanding. That's the good one. To take any of those images, states of mind, and dramas literally, that's the bad one. That's where we're on the text. So if that's true for cultures, that's also true for individuals, meaning you can judge people. Some people are better than others. What do you know? We are seeing with the MAGA movement what happens if we pretend that's not real. Hey, the absolute worst person is just as good as the best person. Let's allow him to rule. Garbage. Belief undermines judgment. Some people are better. Some people are worse. What makes the better people better? Philodianoia, their openness to develop their understanding and address their problems. It's not being problemless, because that's being a scammer to pretend you've never made a mistake or you don't have problems. Those sorts of people who are in that game try to distract from their own problems by attacking others. The homosexual religious people who spend their whole time telling other homosexuals they're going to hell. The poor MAGA chuds who spend their time attacking other impoverished groups. Clip chimping, that debate that we talked about yesterday, where that man tried to hide his own ignorance and false beliefs by finding an excuse. You used a bad word that I don't like, to go on the attack at someone else. By the way, if he was open and curious, he might wonder, hang on a second, could that attacking of someone for making a mistake be the very thing that I do to myself that prevents me from ever learning? Because if I learn, I'm going to have to make mistakes. If I have to learn anything, I have to admit I've made a mistake in the past because I'm ignorant. I don't know the self in reality. I thought I did. I made a mistake. But if my approach to making a mistake is to be a dick about it, to beat people up, to play my sadistic Noah role and try and berate you and chastise you and slander you and all this shit, then why the heck would I ever admit I was ever wrong about anything? So that's the irony of people who are unjust. They're projecting their own problems onto others. So the man in the debate who was the believer, who was attacking the understanding man, was really saying, this is my problem. This very way of being that I'm addicted to, the Joker smile, that I'm inflicting upon you, is the very state of mind that prevents me from learning myself. Only instead of addressing this voice in my head that puts me down and makes me bad, I am going to find temporary respite by doing it to others. That's the thing. You might have heard the expression, hurt people, or the cycle of violence, or the cycle of injustice. It's that. I got a text. My protein is coming today. Hooray. So, to be a good person, to be a kind person, is to acknowledge both ourselves and in others. And say, hey, listen, let's first start exploring the principles that are universal and true and rational and general. And then whenever we hit a block and we can't progress, then let's address the other triangle. You can't do one without the other. We're not simply rational. We're also believers. So that's where we are at the text. We are learning what it means to be rational, what it means to be good, and of course, how we can be good ourselves, how we recognize good people, and how we can differentiate good cultures, and how we can join the good one. Because Hellenic isn't about belief, isn't about bloodlines, isn't about what piece of dirt you were born into. To be Hellenic, the good way of being, is about your state of mind. Your state of mind, and how you seek to function through understanding, to become curious about both triangles, to purify the cause of our problems and to perfect our excellence, to get rid of the false image of the self and to know the self. That's what it means to be Hellenic. So, that's what we want to do. It's our purpose, that's our excellence. To not do it, we will suffer in our relationships and how we treat ourselves, and even potentially how we die and what happens after we die. So, absolutely worth doing. Let's keep reading. So, we begin with Harry, the person representing belief, speaking of a believer in a debate with an understanding person, which was the, it was a, I should get the names. I don't know these people. I can't remember who they were. They were within the left community, and it was a silly debate that they were having yesterday at the time of the recording, and it doesn't really matter. But the interesting thing is, it's kind of an example of the very thing we're reading. We have Harry representing belief, and we have Joseph representing understanding. Now, of course, in that particular debate, neither party really understood their position. Harry has a better understanding of belief, because he's studied philosophy for however long. But he studied academic philosophy, so all about beliefs. Joseph studied at a different college, Golden West, where the author of this book taught, where real philosophy was happening. And so, the believer better understands the position of belief, and the understander actually has the art of understanding to guide a reflection on that belief. So similar, but of course the debate that happened, two people from our culture who don't know this yet. Hopefully they can learn. Hopefully we all can. I'm turning on my fan, hold on. So interesting that that debate was a kind of a reflection of the book that we're reading. But of course we can go further in this book, because there is a third person that wasn't present in that debate, Miss Aaliyah. If only she was present if only there was an Aaliyah character present in that debate, maybe it would have gone very differently. So it begins with Harry, the believer, saying, hey, there is no point to understanding, because who can understand objectively? Isn't everyone influenced by their personal history and culture? Don't you carry your own past interpretations with you into the present? Therefore, it's all just interpretation. You jerk. So, forget about that. Culture's the same thing. Just you inherit an interpretation, you play your role in history, and you die. Who gives a shit? But what you do get from belief is, with a shared belief, you get a common bond of feeling. And we talk about those those comedy skits you might see on YouTube or Instagram or something, where a comedian interviews a MAGA person, and they're all different. They're all have completely different beliefs. No one agrees with anyone, but they have a shared belief that Trump can do no wrong, and that gives them that feeling of having a common bond. They don't agree on anything. No religion does. Everyone's idea of this or that Christianity or Judaism is different, but there is something that they shared that gives them a common bond of feeling and allows them to quickly sense who's for and who's against, who's on your team and who you must murder or kill or fight or abuse or mock. The savage ignorance of humanity is simply described here. We're addicted to belief because it gives us a shared common feeling, and we act unjustly towards our fellow man because they're not sharing that belief. The cause of all human problems. Tell your friends. And of course, Joseph says, yes, and our culture has all of these catchphrases built up around that. Know your place. Stay on the right side of the tracks. And this whole idea of lifting yourself up from your bootstraps is used by right-wingers, again, belief-based fascists, to say, oh yes, you can be a billionaire, and if you're poor, it's not because of the systems of oppression, it's because you haven't pulled yourself up. But built into that expression is the idea you can't. It's literally impossible to grab your shoelaces and lift yourself into the air. Can't happen. So this lift yourself up from your bootstraps is a catchphrase used by believers, the cause of human problems, to say, you're at fault, but there's nothing you can do about it. You will always be slaves. You will always be, and every belief group has a word for the others that are exploited. You will always be infidels. You will always be heathens. You will always be goyim. You will always be poor. You will always be second class. Because you can't lift yourself up from your bootstraps. You can't go beyond the place you were born into. You have to know your place and stay on your own side of the railway tracks. Harry thinks it's true because that's the premise of belief. You get told what to believe when you're young, and that's it. You don't change, you don't grow. That's why it's the cause of all human ignorance and problems. And Joseph says, hang on a second. Well, why then do you hold on to this Christian stuff? Isn't that from a completely dead age and a dead tradition? And he goes, no, because it adapts. So that's another aspect for belief. If you can adapt your belief to survive, look at all of the MAGA grifters. Now that, well, it's becoming too embarrassing and too difficult to ignore the extreme injustice that Trump and MAGA has been doing always, forever. They're trying to adapt their beliefs and save themselves. So all of the right-wingers are now saying, well, actually, I never knew that he was going to... Actually, I liked what he said about this, but I didn't agree to that. All of the Joe Rogan idiots. All the Joe Rogan...
Like, literally, suck my dick, dude. Oh my
no,
fuck.
don't do that. All the Joe Rogan fucks.
The woman? Ugh.
Hey, don't say that about her.
You sick fuck.
All the sick fucks of the Joe Rogan sphere. Trying to adapt their beliefs, because if you can adapt your belief to survive, then that's the different adaptive systems over the others have the capacity to survive, or when in Rome, do as the Romans do. So what we should be doing is saying, let's not just try and pretend, let's actually find out why you followed Trump, or why you were a religious person, or why you supported capitalism. That's called changing the goalposts, saving the belief by changing the facts and evidence, which of course is terrible. We don't allow it anywhere else, only in the highest levels of the land. We don't allow a mechanic to go, oh really? I used the wrong oil and your engine exploded? Well, actually, maybe your engine was the problem. I was never wrong. We always have to find the cause of the problem and address it, except for when it comes to belief. So, some cultures are based in belief, some cultures are based in understanding, and you can tell the difference because the Greeks allegorized their mythology of Homer to represent rational principles that are higher and more general. And if a whole culture can engage in this, then it will bring about the new stage of our development. And we use metaphors, similes, and allegories, which we've already covered today. Joseph said, how did I get into this? I was partying as a party animal, and then I realized I had enough of being a party animal. I wanted to understand myself. I wanted to test how far reasoning and the use of the intellect could take me. I was irresistibly drawn to the free exercise of my intelligence, a lover of understanding, and I delight in the insights that I've had so far. And then I realized that the devotional aspects of the religious life have nothing to do with my goals and are, more often than not, going down a different path than my own. So the early recognition that the devotion stuff of religion is different than rationality, which is the how he slowly got into realizing the difference between belief and understanding. So, in talking about the Hellenic use of mythology, they sought to achieve an excellence that reveals in their perfection the shadow of the divine. When men use allegories, similes, and analogies to find natural parallels with their experience, they become more rational and they preserve their roles in society. I don't know what that means. Justify their life, I suppose. And they keep their traditions alive. Harry says, I'm not sure all about all this. It seems to have gotten all messed up. For me, they're just different. Remember, belief can't judge because judging is understanding. They're just different. I'll never figure out why anyone would waste their time trying to classify Greek mythology as a religion. As far as I can see, it is not even a genuine religious expression, let alone a religion. I think technically he's right, because religion, the definition means to be bound by a necessary saving belief. But if you want religion to, in a more general sense, to mean a spiritual tradition that a culture a culture can share, then it is. So, Harry doesn't want to explore, doesn't want to judge, because of the implications. The implications is if he's wrong, then he'll have to face that his life has been a sham. He doesn't have the courage and character to do that. That's called philosophical ignorance, to realize you don't know something and you were mistaken, and to do better, to learn. That's fun. When you play hide and seek, you start by saying, I don't know where all these other people are hidden. But that's okay. The fun part is recognizing you don't know and doing it anyway, seeking it out anyway, doing the seeking. Of course, belief-based societies have to be built on oppression because the believers don't have any expertise. So to justify the violence against the many, we use the idea of punishment. You made a mistake? Now we can genocide you and take all your shit. I mean, punish you for making a mistake. Punishment is a sickness used to smuggle in violence and justify violence. And violence is needed for oppression. Oppression is needed to preserve belief-based or conserve belief-based traditions where the worst members of our species do the worst things to all of us and destroy our planet. Conservatism, religion, capitalism. And at the root, the pathologos, because they had to have learnt it somewhere. That's called the pathologos. So, Harry doesn't want to face that stage of enlightenment so it's a stage of growth, stage of enlightenment, called philosophical ignorance. So he's out. But you know who does? Miss Aaliyah. Let's start from here. Aaliyah jumps in and says, hang on a second. The different cultures are not just different to me, Harry. I would like to see what's behind that point Joseph was making about allegorizing, mate. Are you saying that the cultures that could allegorize their mythologies have a significantly different development than those that don't? Yes. The Jews didn't have to model their thought and actions on a jealous, angry, and tribal deity after Philo showed them how the Old Testament could be allegorized. Philo did it for the Bible. For Philo did for the Bible what the ancient Greeks did to Homer. But the Christians resist allegorizing their myth, and so they can't break out of static forms. So there is little chance for them to develop an appreciative understanding of systems or theories of reality beyond forms. Now you might see the irony of this, because the systems, so the systems and structure of reality that we participate in through understanding to reach higher levels of harmony and excellence in, called the logos. When they're experienced directly, they're called the eidos. But one of the great betrayals against our culture is the mistranslation of the word eidos, which means to behold, as forms. You might have heard of Plato's forms. It's not forms, it's eidos. Why is that significant? Because the misuse of mythology or allegory is to look at the physical forms only. You're supposed to read Plato. He says literally, this is the allegory of the cave. To go beyond physical forms to structures, intelligibility, and eidos. So it's quite ironic or tragic that the word that's supposed to be beyond forms is given the English word form in academia. Another demonstration of why academic philosophy isn't real philosophy. It's the opposite. So the Christians were stuck at the level of forms because they resist using allegorizing their mythology, Elias says. And how do you see that allegorizing does that? Since allegorizing in its perfect form is the art that tells a story in one set of terms, but its meaning must be discovered in another parallel set of terms, it allows the perception of a higher, more rational form behind more primitive expression. So what we are saying, beliefs are savage and primitive and zombie-like, and you're stuck in a script like an NPC. Here is the word primitive. Beliefs primitive. Rationality higher. Allegory, how to make the jump. What do you call a perfect allegory? I mean, what would be an example of a perfect allegory? One of the greatest allegories is Plato's allegory of the cave and the upper world, found in the 7th book of the Republic. And the reason I always say read the Balboa translation is it doesn't have the word form in there. So all of the key words have not been translated correctly for the last 2,000 years or so. But the Balboa translations, which you can find for free online, has the actual Greek and the actual translations. So, we've been hamstrung from doing real philosophy for thousands of years. So, read the Balboa translation of the 7th book of the Republic for the allegory of the cave. Now, you get some bits, you get a general overview of kind of what's happening without the keywords. But it's like playing Resident Evil, but you don't have any of the keys to unlock the doors because they haven't been translated, they haven't been programmed into the game. Yeah, you can get a sense of, oh, it's about a mansion and it's about zombies and there's a sexy guy that female gamers goon over called Leon.
Gooners.
But you can't play the game unless you read the Balboa translation. So, you'll find the allegory of the cave and the upper world. And then notice it's cave and the upper world. It's not just the cave. That's only half of it. There's the upper world as well. Description of the upper world and what's there, the lakes, the animals, the sun. So the meaning of the, that's in the 7th book of the Republic. The meaning of each term and its relationship to all the, this is Joseph talking. Excuse me. The meaning of each term and its relationship to all the others in that allegory can be found within the Republic itself. Thus, it provides an easy way to test your understanding of the work as a whole. That's interesting. What does it do? I mean, if you ignore it, as I did when I read it, what have you really lost? Lost? With it, you have to consciously search out all of the parallel terms. Highlight that. Then you have to systematically reconcile all the parts into a splendid unity. If you do it, you will learn what understanding a dialogue is all about. More than this, it will also bring you to the curious task of working out the relationship between the good and the idea of the good. Now, again, idea of the good, eidos, to behold, so the experience of the good. And we call that crossing the purple line, because on our little map, the conversation is someone using understanding, the dialectic, Joseph, to help Harry cross the green line, Harry and Aaliyah, from beliefs or human ignorance, which are personal interpretation, cross the green line from ignorance to wisdom, via understanding. That culminates in the peak experience of ousia, mind turning around to know itself, or nous, or knowing. Nous is the Greek word for knowing. But what Joseph just said is, hey, the movement from the cave to the upper world is there, but also you have to use it to figure out the relationship between the idea of the good, the eidos of the good, goodness, that's knowing, and its cause, the good itself. Which means crossing the purple line. Two uses of the dialectic: cross the green line to cross the purple line. Ignorance to wisdom, wisdom to knowing the self, ultimate enlightenment. Neat? Yes. Is it neat?
Everything this guy does is perfect and beautiful. And he's handsome. I said it.
What? Handsome? That's nice of you to say.
Jester goon maxed.
And that's also something.
I'm cute. Like a cutie pie.
Yes, but he's not talking about you, Emma. He's talking about me. Right?
If you don't know, now you know.
Now you know. So, bring you to the curious task of working out the relationship between the good and the experience of the good. And that is something I have found to be very interesting. This may be a dumb question, but how does that relate to philosophy? The journey to the idea of the good, which, by the way, is the most brilliant light of being, is the royal road the philosopher travels. And gaining that vision is the practice of philosophy. So all of this reading and this learning how to think and learning how to explore ideas is for the purpose of gaining that vision. Understanding what justice really is isn't just about saving our human race or putting an end to the injustice of conservatism, capitalism, and religion. It's because justice is an aspect of that vision of the brilliant light of being. It's to gain that experience. Because as we say, the first principle in this way of being that we are making, because those insights or spiritual experiences are objects for reflection to develop deeper understanding. In other words, this use of the dialectic to remove our beliefs that we've been carrying since childhood and to explore the eidos, not ideas, not forms, the eidos, the aspects of knowingness or the brilliant light of being, its aspects being beauty, harmony, justice, excellence, etc., all of the selfers, is so that we can have that experience. No use just learning that there's a party happening down the street if you can't go. You don't send your slave to the banquet or the orgy, as the saying goes. You go there yourself. And also that experience, the more often you can have it and the greater depth and the greater length that you can have that experience for, the better you can reflect on it to develop your understanding to cross the purple line. So what's philosophy? It's not about beliefs. It's not about getting a PhD. It's not about using Kant and Hegel to justify your own speculations. It's about having that experience. Because that's wisdom. And philosophy means love of wisdom. And that's why philodianoia is better. Philodianoia, love of understanding, allows to cross the purple line beyond even philosophy. In his last days in the Phaedo, Socrates says you can even call the academic philosophers of his time as well philodoxias, lovers of opinion. The practice of philosophy to reach this philosophy, love of wisdom. And if this is the self, you go from philodoxia to philosophia to philophronesis, the upgrade of philosophy, love of the self. Love of the state of being self. So, the journey to the idea, the experience of the good, is the royal road that the philosopher travels, and gaining that vision is the practice of philosophy, says Joseph. But there is still more. You see, once that has been seen, one knows it as ultimate reality. Wow. That's pretty cool. And from that lofty vision, one is said to be able to go on from that lofty vision, go on to grasp the nature of the good itself through the mastery of the dialectic. That's called crossing the purple line. Therefore, we learning how to master the dialectic ticks all boxes. It's how we remove our problems, it's how we gain that vision of ultimate reality, and it's also how we move beyond it to know the self. So there's a reason why we're spending all this time learning how to think, learning how to read, learning how to explore ideas, learning how to address people properly, and address people's problems and questions properly. Learn how to understand our dreams, have I said that already? Learn how to read a text properly. It's because this art is the ticket, including the ticket through that vision of ultimate reality to the good itself. Good to understand what philosophy really is.
Cookie maxing.
I should have a cookie.
I'm too pure.
I have a sickness for the thickness.
We all have a sickness for this thickness. The Giat of philosophy. Oh, that didn't work out the way I was hoping it would work out. Oh,
You're a little bitch ass baby.
I know, that was a bad
It's a
joke.
total shit show.
Ugh, I agree.
First you're saying the F word or whatever you said. Now the tone is completely out of control.
No, it's out of control. I apologize. I haven't the faintest idea of what you're talking about, but it sounds wonderful. Ah, that's interesting. See, it seemed like Aaliyah was seemed to be more familiar with real philosophy because she was the one being able to. She had the big. In part one, there was Harry's dialectic, which was him fighting to defend belief, and then he had to dip out once he realized that he didn't want to conclude because he didn't want to face the nothingness of his position. So Aaliyah jumped in. Aaliyah was open. Aaliyah was also using her feminine wiles to encourage Harry to keep going. So we were getting the impression that, Aaliyah might be a philosopher. But here we say, no, she doesn't have experience with this. She's just a natural philosopher. She's naturally a greater kind of a soul. She has a natural affinity for philosophy, for understanding. She has a natural openness to learning. So we could represent Aaliyah with Athena. Athena burst forth from Zeus's forehead, fully formed, and geared up in armor, ready to fight for philosophy. So Athena representing wisdom, spontaneous wisdom, or natural affinity for wisdom. So that's interesting to learn about Aaliyah as a kind of a natural philosopher or an intuitive philosopher. Of course, she has to go on to develop the art and everything, but it really shows the difference between Harry, someone who has studied philosophy in the wrong way, and Aaliyah, someone who has a natural affinity and aptitude for the game. Because she's saying, I haven't the faintest idea of what you're talking about. Oh. Kind of philosophy 101, but says interesting things about this character. But it sounds wonderful. But that brings me to ask why you need Plato's allegory instead of selecting one from Philo. Is one better than the other? Yes! There is a fundamental difference between the way Philo and Plato use allegory. For the structure of Plato's Republic was designed to be expressed through allegory. Analogies and allegory, analogies, and similes. But Philo inherited a work that had no such design. He tried to allegorize it in every way. However, it had an intrinsic weakness. And this is the nature of interpretation. And you can say, well, we can save Christianity by finding a way of wangling it around so that it expresses Plato, as Philo did for the Jews. That's always going to be weak. You might say, well, it has more of a broad appeal because few people lack the intelligence and character to reflect on the bullshit they grew up with and have the courage and character to let go of what was false, because they would have to admit their parents were stupid or lying to them, as were their priest / imam / rabbi / minister. And people they lack the character to do that. They would rather pretend to be knowers in their ignorance. So, using their own tradition and wangling it around to make it rational might have a broader appeal. Perhaps, but it's always going to be weak. Why not just drop the bullshit and learn the real thing? When you go to learn veterinary science and you think that cats are girls and dogs are boys, the professor doesn't try and mollycoddle your beliefs and say, yes, that actually is the case, but sometimes cats look like dogs. We call them female dogs, but they're really cats in dog costumes. They're furries. Yes, every female dog is a cat furry. That's the equivalent of trying to save religion. Trying to pretend, yes, it's this cause of all of this injustice and genocide and horrific everything, subjugation of women forever. But maybe we can save it. It's always going to be weak if you try and save a fundamentally weak and flawed tradition. So that's what he's talking about here. So, Philo inherited a work that had no such design originally. He tried to allegorize it in every way. However, it had an intrinsic weakness. Clearly, there is much in the Garden of Eden myth that can be allegorized. But Philo indeed does it. But the key relationship between God and man, the creator and the created, has inherent difficulties when it is allegorized. So you can find a way of wangling around the Garden of Eden story to understand how we relate to the source, self, and intelligence. But there's too much false garbage in there to save it. Is that okay? Do we need to be mollycoddled? How do you say that? Mollycoddled? Mollycoddled. Do we need to be mollycoddled? Fuck. Mollycoddled. Damn it. Hold. Turns out I've been saying it wrong. I refuse to admit I've been saying mollycoddled wrong this whole time. I am going to change the goalposts. Or actually say, maybe mollycoddled is true as well. Please mollycoddle me by pretending that my ignorance was right, says believers. So that's interesting. That's an interesting symmetry there.
Mollycoddled.
Hey, welcome Nitro, welcome Sus. The word is mollycoddled.
Mollycoddled.
Mollycoddled. I was saying it wrong.
Mollycoddled.
We have the man that says it. So, interesting that I was saying mollycoddled wrong, and I refuse to admit it. I would rather be mollycoddled into you pretending I wasn't. No, I want... No, say it. I want you to say it.
Mollycoddle. Mollycoddle. Mollycoddle.
Okay, enough of that. So, trying to save an old tradition that isn't built on analogy by a philosopher or built on the self-logos is going to have inherent intrinsic weaknesses. But some people say, well, you should mollycoddle religious people and be nice to their religious stuff and try and save their religion by using allegory to fit it, which is interesting because you can't work the other way. You have to know the truth already to try and match the belief traditions to the truth. You can never use the belief traditions to reach truth. It's always reverse engineering, which is a problem because if it's supposed to be a text worth reading, it has to be a game that you can solve to reach the truth. Otherwise, burn it. Get rid of it. In other words, if you have the false belief that cats are dogs and that girls are cats and boys are dogs, you can't use that belief to figure out how to be a vet. You need the vet who knows the truth to try and mollycoddle your belief. So that's what we're seeing here. Trying to save inherently weak traditions, as Philo did with Judaism. What does Aaliyah say about that? But I thought you said all myths can be allegorized. They might be, but when some myths are allegorized, they can't be believed. To save them for belief, parts of a myth may be rejected or transformed by arbitrary interpretations. In a similar way, when actual events can't be reconciled with one's expectations, then another myth may be created to save the belief. So, now I know that sounds curious, but it is true. I learned to work on several myths, allegories, satires, and analogies, and it was as much fun as it was revealing. And it will always come down to that. You can't save the belief if you are going to allegorize it properly. Why? Because allegory, if it's telling the truth, is telling the truth about the nature of human problems is belief. Meaning, you have to give up belief at some stage. So you create another myth, and by the way, this is called hermeneutics or apologetics, which are fancy words that mean trying to save the belief. And there are lots of philosophers on YouTube that talk about something good, and they spend their whole career trying to pretend it exists within religion, because the people who have all the money that we need for food in our crazy society have all the money because they manipulate through religion. In other words, you can't keep your position at the university if you say that all religions are in principle bad, because they're belief, and belief is the cause of human problems. So you have to create another myth. So you have to leave parts of the text out that say you need faith or belief, or leave out the text, parts of the text that say women are less than men, or it's okay to murder children. So you have to create all these myths as to create your own personal myths as to why you're ignoring these certain parts, as well as creating these extra myths to allegorize what you do listen to. So, seems crazy to me, but human loyalty to false beliefs have always seemed crazy to me, but that makes me weird, I suppose. Why not just tell the truth? Why be precious about what was false? Mollycoddled. And are you saying that when some myths are allegorized, they can't be believed? Give me one that couldn't be believed. I'd like to see one. Let's see what he says about this. Will you accept the biblical story of the Garden of Eden as a myth? That's one Philo explores. Sure. First, though... Oh, are you there, Sus, still? I have a new microphone. Does it sound different? Does it sound good? My new microphone that I got yesterday. Let me know if it sounds good. Or if you've noticed a difference. First, though, it would be helpful if we could add another dimension to this inquiry, because I just saw how it can fit into what we have been discussing. So try this question. Were you taught that God banished both Adam and Eve from the Garden of Eden? Yes, as I recall, they were thrown out and forced to work by the sweat of their brow from that day on for disobeying God's command not to eat the fruit of the tree of good and evil. Actually, says Joseph, you are not reporting the myth, but an interpretation of it. According to the myth, while both Adam and Eve had eaten from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, God only exiled Adam, not Eve, only from the garden, but not from Eden. The reason God gives for the exile is not because Adam ate from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, but to keep him from eating from the fruit of the tree of life. For if Adam had, that would mean he would become like a god with eternal life. Thus, the central theme or lesson of the myth is that God banishes those who might become like him, either in knowledge of good and evil, judgment, as we are learning is the essence of understanding and what is fought against by belief to allow for oppression and tyranny and injustice, to be able to know good and bad, right and wrong. Hey, what are the believers saying? Wealth inequality isn't bad. Why? Demonstrate why billions of people must suffer so a couple of hundred people can have more wealth than they'll ever be able to spend in a million lifetimes. Explain that. Oh no, we can't. But what we can do is say, thinking is bad. You can't judge us good, but we can stop you from judging between good and evil. How is religion good if it's based on belief? Oh, it's not, but we can stop you from judging. How is genocide good? Oh no, it's not, but we can stop you from judging. Anti-Semitic. To judge, good and bad. We're all entitled to our own beliefs. We've got a right to exist, it's our opinion to do so. See? Interesting? So, even how almost every single person who's heard of the Adam and Eve story, they blame women, by the way. God didn't. They say the devil tricked. Nope. We were punished for sin. Nope. The bad guy in the story was God. Didn't want people to be able to think and judge for themselves, and they didn't want people to become like him. The exact opposite of the truth of reality. Self and mind we become like by learning to think and judge. That's the dialectic. We become like Joseph in reading this book. We become like the author in understanding the structure of this book and talking about it in this way with our friends. We become like our dream maker by listening to our dreams. Any good teacher will make students like himself. He's the villain. Of course, if you read that myth, there are other things like there are more than one God. So the monotheistic religion of Christianity is actually a polytheistic religion. There are many gods, and this was one of them. If you read the book, which no one does, because you have to learn how to read without interpretation. Interesting?
It's not being crazy. It's called reaching a higher sense of
And we're not crazy, we're reaching a higher sense.
I love this guy.
Thank you.
Do a poggers.
We will do poggers all day. So the central theme or lesson is that God banishes those who might become like him, either in the knowledge of good and evil or eternal life. That is very interesting. Very. God made us in his image and likeness and punishes us for realizing it? Now that is immensely strange. So, back to it. Alright, back to the reading. So, Aaliyah's saying, where's Aaliyah go? That is very interesting. Very. God made us in his image and likeness and punishes us for realizing it. Now that is immensely strange. Yes. Philo's allegory ignored this theme. He skipped over it because he couldn't find a parallel for that capricious act in any rational structure. Now, I don't care if I sound like a dummy. I don't know what capricious means. It sounds like a orange juice. Capricious. Someone prone to sudden, unpredictable changes of attitude, behavior, or condition. A person who constantly changes their minds or moods or plans on her whim. Okay. Alright, makes sense. So he made us in his image, but then doesn't want us to be in his image. So that's very capricious. I get it. Woke up to the nerve to go full RN. Well, I hope it goes well. I hope you're listening to your dreams. They might give you some assistance in you reaching your goals. So I had to skip over that capricious act because they couldn't find a parallel for it in a rational structure. The myth reports a jealous and unjust God using punishment arbitrarily. It is strange because he prohibits what he has created in his own image and likeness from being like himself in the most significant way. Faced with this difficulty, most authorities prefer to either ignore the end of the story and interpret what authorities do, and interpret the objectionable parts of the myth rather than face this issue by systematically allegorizing its message. In other words, believers be lying. Authorities be lying to believers. And of course, if we didn't have to lie, we wouldn't need belief. If we didn't have to lie to save a belief, we could understand it because it would be rational, we could allegorize the myths. No need for belief. So all of these ignorant people who get all the money and the gold jets and the sexual exploitation, they would lose that ability to do that because they're ignorant. They're just believers. We would have to demand the greatest understanders be in positions of power, and those are people who love wisdom and do not seek that kind of injustice. So the house of cards would fall over if we didn't have to lie to the believers. And of course we want that house of cards to fall over so we can become rational people and become a rational race and enter into our new phase of being. One caretaker studying Viking ruins. Ooh, studying Viking ruins and tarot in the meantime. Right, I mentioned on the Discord about some options for creating sets of tarot that might be exciting. I was reading it the other day and I got excited about how you could derive tarot sets from the text that we are reading. Because that would serve two functions. It would make awesome tarot cards, but also it would encourage you to not interpret, but all of the understanding of the key themes. Oh, welcome, Rolled Up. I'm not sure if that /Discord works, but there is a link below the video. So all of the ideas that you could represent with the tarot cards would be from the text only. Therefore, you'd be training yourself to read without interpretation, which is exactly what we're talking about here. Not trying to interpret to save your beliefs, but raising your mind to meet the level of intelligence of the author of the text that we write. But also, because you're using it with a tarot, with images, you would be creating a mythology. The difference is, you would be a rational mythology, the good kind. Because all of the images you use in your tarot cards would have a symbolic meaning in the text. So either you or the person you're talking to could look at this image and you could say, now it's important for you not just to believe me, but find this metaphor in the text. And that's what allegory is. So in the image of the cave, in Plato's cave and the upper world analogy, every bit of furniture, every item has a significant part in the text. It's like solving a puzzle. Every part of the allegory has something in the text that you can understand rationally, and that because these texts themselves reflect the rationality of reality, you're solving a puzzle, which is fun, but also you are learning about reality itself. It's a win-win.
It's a win-win-win.
I'll try make oracles based off it, but you can also do Socratic midwifery, your own deck. It's mostly a reflection tool. I use it. Don't use it for woo-woo. Yes, that's what we're talking about. The woo-woo stuff would be people who just use it to represent their own beliefs or belief traditions. The rational one would be as objects of reflection, because the person drawing the picture or writing the story had that rational structure in their mind. They just used these fun figures, gods, superheroes, heroes, to personify them, to make it fun to talk about and easy to communicate. Which would mean you would have to get into one of these texts. Now, I mentioned the ox herding pictures of Zen Buddhism. That's a fun one. But the midwifery book, the Jesus and Socrates, A Dialogue in Heaven book, this book, Is It All Relative? Because this, if you want to use tarot to help people see through their problems, this book is the nature of human problems. Belief. The most common belief, everything is relative to personal opinions and beliefs. It's also the belief that saves belief. Because if everything is just belief and there's no understanding, then beliefs are good actually. But they're not. They're the source of our problems. We have to uncover them. So you could take all of the key points of this book, or characters, or themes, or principles, and make a deck based on it. And then when you pull a card, it can remind you of that aspect that you've studied. So that's the role of mythology. It's a story that reminds you of these true principles that you're learning and memorizing and remembering. Or, if you have an even more special client, you could encourage them to find the meaning in the text. And then when they come back to you, this is a good way of seeing whether or not somebody's worth talking to, by the way. Some people are bad faith actors. But if they're genuinely motivated, they'll want to go out and do their own homework. It's a personal thing. It's a meaningful thing. So if they come back, having read the book, with an answer, oh, that card we pulled, I think it represents this in the book. Then you can judge their answer. Say, oh, here are some good things you said. Here are some things you might want to think about. Maybe you missed the mark on. And then pull another card. So that's an option that you can play with. My favorite is Chiron. Who's Chiron? So it would be, by the way, what we just described is what it means to be Hellenic, because this is what we just read back here. So the difference between the Christians and the Hellenics, or the Aborigines and the Hellenics, is the Hellenics didn't have a split between mind and imagination, the rational and true, and their creativity. They could participate and share in the same images about the most profound aspects of life, about the divine, some by using their intellect and others by using their imagination. They didn't have to sacrifice their minds or repress the imaginative side of their natures. Their epics, architecture, statues, temples, dramatic plays, and tarot cards even, all sought to achieve an excellence, and that excellence, by doing it really well, reveals in the perfection of their art a shadow or reflection of the divine. There was never a need to take these myths literally or historically, simply because no one would have thought that they could gain salvation by believing them. So let me put it another way. No Hellenic would have said the way to gain eternal life was to believe the Iliad. When people use allegories, similes, tarot images, and analogies to find the natural parallels with their experiences, they not only become more rational, but also preserve their roles in society and keep alive their traditions. So in other words, if you create a tarot set of images that has analogical parallels to the text we're reading, you are combining your mind and your imagination. And because what we are reading is a rational work that reflects the parallels of reality, they wouldn't have to just believe you. They could ask questions, and you could give reasons as to why this is their problem, or that's their problem, or that's what they need to have a look at. One step further, you could encourage them to find the parallels in the book. So someone who is of a high level of intelligence, you think might share a love of understanding, you could say, hey, I'm not going to tell you the answer to this. I'm going to ask you some questions and encourage you to find the parallels in the text that this card is based on. That's the new way of being. That's the Hellenic, combining the intellect with the imagination. And no need for belief. For yourself and for them. It's a win-win.
It's a win-win-win.
So, exciting stuff. And by the way, what we just described is also the Republic. Even those who haven't read a proper translation, because we have the Balboa translation now, even those people recognize the Republic as one of the top 5 books ever written, and that is entirely what we described. Allegory and images that you use, that you read, and you use your imagination to visualize, that has a rational parallel within the text that you can solve, which means you're engaged in understanding. And understanding is our excellence, taking us out of belief, which is the cause of our problems. So, to create works of anything, music, literature, fan fiction about your favorite streamer. Oh, I shouldn't encourage that. Forget about that one. Tarot cards, anything. You will be functioning like Plato. And while religious beliefs die out when that person believes them, because every religious person has their own personal interpretation, and because when they're gone, then that interpretation is gone because it's just their own, you'd be making a work that could be an object of rational reflection for humanity for centuries after you're gone. Because it's rational. It reflects the texts that the... Oops. It's rational in that it has a parallel within the text that you read without interpretation, and the text is a description of reality itself. So your tarot cards or music or comic books or Instagram reels can become objects of reflection that get people into understanding the text that reflect reality itself. The logos. So it's a win-win-win.
Win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win.
Win-win-win-win-win.
It's a win-win-win. It's a win. 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 It's a win.
Win-win-win.
If you don't know, now you know.
And now you know. So, that would be the good thing, and what we're reading here is the bad thing. Where authority figures use not their own creations, but inherited books. Because they've already got a built-in base of believers, because parents have brainwashed into their kids the Torah or the Bible or whatever the fuck. So they're just exploiting what was already programmed from childhood. And they save the belief by parts of the myth being rejected or transformed by arbitrary interpretations. That would be the opposite of what we were talking about. In a similar way, when actual events can't be reconciled with one's expectations, then another myth can be created to save the belief. That's called prejudice, of course. Oh, I'm a racist, and this... Oh, hold. There's my protein. So, play the sound. Which means I'm back from the break. To get my puzzle. So, right. So when people expect something bad to happen because they're racist, and the member of that race does something good, they have to create another myth. Oh, actually, what he was trying to do is blah 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 blah. He was trying to trick us by being nice. That's how our beliefs work, to reinterpret our experiences to justify the false beliefs. Like if you think, well, I'm no good, no one will like me, and then someone invites you to lunch, you'll have to create a new myth to make sense of that situation. They were just inviting me to lunch because they really are going to embarrass me in front of everyone. So we need to look for when we do that. When we attribute these intentions or we create these extra myths that are not warranted by the reality that we are facing. That's what midwifery does. Because when we realize we're doing this projection or leaving out what is there, as the religious authorities do to their religious texts, we as good people want to recognize that and stop doing that, because that keeps us in a loop of our ignorance and suffering. Why, whenever anyone says something nice about you, do you create a fantasy, create a new myth to justify why they actually don't think that? You know, we were talking about that debate we looked at yesterday. We referred to yesterday between the belief-based man and the understanding-based man. The belief-based man could only do that anything rational the understanding man provided, he would have to create another mythology to explain it, which is what people do when they talk about their imagined intentions. I imagine you were just doing this for clicks. Why? Because they have a belief about that person, and instead of changing their mind based on the belief, they create another belief to save the belief. That's when they go into intention bullshit. I don't like your tone because blah, 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 blah. I think you're intending on, you're just tricking me. No, that's what you do. Projection. So, that's how beliefs save themselves, collectively, within cultures, within religious traditions, and within our own lives, to blind us from participating in higher levels of being. For instance, we just talked about an exciting way of approaching our friend Suss's art with the tarot cards. Now, because that's an invitation to a more rational way of being, that's new. This channel is new. There aren't any channels like this out there that I've seen. We can expect the counter-attacks from belief. So we will expect our friend to not create, we don't choose our thoughts, they come to us, but we will expect those thoughts to come to our friend saying, you can't do this. To create a mythology about her being not good enough, about me trying to trick her or something, or about reason itself not being good enough. Me, the reason, or her. Almost certainly that would have happened to some degree because that's the human condition. As we seek to participate in higher levels of reason and intelligence, the beliefs that we carry from childhood that we've been reincarnated to address will surface in interpretation. What we are learning is how to recognize that by new myths. New myths that are to transform what we've experienced, arbitrary interpretations, or leaving out what was said. The trick is to write down all of those reinterpretations or blind spots, and also how it felt. So here is our use of allegory, metaphor, and analogy. Write down the allegory. What was the steps when you heard what I said, and then what happened, and then what happened, and then what happened, and how does it conclude? Did it conclude in you doing it or not doing it? Success or failure? Or doing something similar but in the same vein? That's the allegory. Every object of that is a message because that same drama has been playing out through your life. Similes. Write down on top of that structure of the drama or allegory, the similes. What was it like? What were the states of mind? Did you start excited? Did you start getting a bit scared? Did you doubt yourself? Did you end up feeling depressed? Map those high and low states on a graph along with the drama. Similes. Metaphor. What did the voice sound like? Who was it like? Were there any objects that came up? Any objects or people that came up within that drama or within your own imagination? This is what we're talking about, not separating your imagination from the intelligible. Only you're mapping all of those, the drama, allegory, the states of mind, simile, the objects and people, either that came up in imagination or those voices sounded like. Map them out because all of them will be for a reason. That's how we participate in allegory at every moment, especially when we're aiming for our excellence in something rational. Becoming Hellenic. giving you insight into the puzzle you're here to solve. It's a win-win.
Win, 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 win.
Win-win-win-win-win.
Hubba hubba. I just want more testosterone to human body ratio, and I'll finally be satisfied.
We can always count on Emma from the Majority Report to say something like a gooner.
I'm just asking for some gooner men.
We just want some gooner men.
Goon, 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 goon.
Goon, goon, goon.
Gooner.
Okay. All right, calm down. So, in a similar way, when actual events can't be recognized with one's expectations, then another myth can be created to save the belief. So whether it's a belief-based authority figure doing it to their religious beliefs, or an individual doing it with their own prejudices or pathologos beliefs, same principle. See, it always comes back to one thing. Beliefs as the cause of all human problems, at any level. And its solution, understanding. We're just mapping out the nuances on how to engage in that as an activity at every moment. Allegory. Analogy. With an open, curious mind. So, Joseph. Now, I know that sounds curious, but it's true! I learned to work with several myths, allegories, satires, and analogies, and it was as much fun as it was revealing. And are you saying that when some myths are allegorized, they can't be believed? Oh, we've already done this. The Adam and Eve story. Okay, we've just done this one. We're a bit behind. Okay. So, Philo skipped over the Adam and Eve story because he couldn't find a parallel for that capricious, changing your mind erratically, act in any rational structure. The myth reports a jealous and unjust God using punishment arbitrarily. We all know punishment is itself bad, evil, if you like. It is strange because he prohibits what he created in his own image and likeness from becoming like himself in the most significant way. Faced with this difficulty, most authorities prefer to either ignore the end of the story and interpret the objectionable parts of the myth rather than face this issue by systematically allegorizing its message. That's a very strict way of understanding, and it's kind of sad to see it that way, because it means that if God is as you just described him, then man is doomed, because he is flawed in the most fundamental way, isn't he? Since he was created in the image and likeness of an irrational God, then both the creator and the creation are flawed. Maybe we shouldn't take it so literally, so strictly. Right? So if you actually read the Garden of Eden story, you know that God is a piece of shit. And if we're created in his image, well, maybe that's a bit harsh. Flawed, to say the least. In a terrible, terrible way. Stopping us from being able to know and from being like gods ourselves. Arbitrary using punishment and working against his own creation. To be like him? No. But aren't we created in your likeness? Yep. But shut up. So maybe we shouldn't take it literally. If not this way, then what way? If it's there, then read it the way it's written. Which is, of course, the theme of today. Reading it the way it's there, without interpretation. Making all of our works intelligible. While at the same time, so that would be our work. So creating our, using our imagination and our creations, but reflecting a rational structure, but also addressing false creations, addressing our distracting, blocking thoughts and imaginations as myths about our false idea of self. Either way, mythology, no, allegory, reading what's there. To create an analogy, to create allegory, or to translate the allegories of our own creation, but not taking them literally. You're not actually a small being. It's an allegory about a belief that you're carrying. Don't get wrapped up in it. Don't get wrapped up in the particulars of those voices, or the particulars of the drama, or the particulars of your dream. Allegory, raised to the level of meaning to see what it's telling you. And if it's telling you something that's false, address it and let go of it. Don't try and save those voices that put you down. Aaliyah. Well, anyway, let me thank you. Well, anyway. Oh, okay, so Joseph says. So Aaliyah says, hey, if we took it strictly, then we're doomed. Because if God is the way that you described him, no. Not the way he described him, the way it is described. See, putting a person in between the truth and you is a way of dismissing it by saying that's just your opinion. So while Aaliyah is a natural philosopher, she still has work to do. Of course, she must have had work to do, because otherwise why would she have been attracted to Harry the believer in the first place? And of course, she's here for a reason. She can't be perfect, well, in one way, but we're all here to do some work here, so. If it's what you say, then man is doomed, because God is flawed in the most fundamental way. And since he is the creator, since man was created in the image and likeness of an irrational God, then both the creator and the created are flawed. So maybe we shouldn't take it so literally. Maybe we should do this belief interpretation crap. Or maybe you should read it the way it's written. And Elias, well, he doesn't say it like that. Well, hey, if it's there, then read it in the way it's written. If not in the way it's written, then what other way? Well, anyway. So, she has to think about that, maybe. Well, anyway, let me thank you for your account. But I'll tell you that's not the way I recall the Garden of Eden story. What if I go back and look it up and prove you wrong? Then what will you say? See, I was right. She has to think about it. Good for her. Don't just believe Joseph, look it up. I think the New English translation is considered the most accurate of the Bible. Look up for the older New English translation with the footnotes and see if it was as we described it. And what if she proves that actually it was all the way that the authorities tell us? Women are the cause of sin and should be treated like shit, and we were forced to work as slaves for the Epstein billionaire class because we did something bad, because seeking knowledge and eternal life is bad somehow. All of this weird bullshit that justifies slavery and oppression by the worst of our species. What if it's actually in the Bible? That would be fine. Well, but the book is not going to change, Ilya. It will say what it says for you, me, and anyone else who cares to look it up. Bingo. Goodness! You're pretty dogmatic, aren't you? What? No! But I can understand how it seems that way to you, because interpretation blocks understanding. Say it again for the people at the back. Interpretation, the functioning of belief, blocks understanding, the functioning of solving problems and reaching excellence. Belief blocks everything good and rational and true. Belief blocks our goodness. Belief is the cause of our problems. Say it with your full chest for the people in the back to hear. It is not easy to read something that has been distorted by years of interpretation. After that, you'll read into it what you expect to be there. I had to go through what you are now facing. But go ahead, because it's worth going through. The real question is, what will you do if the way I just reported it is there? Is there. You know, literally there. Important thing, we've all been through this. The people who have been with this channel for a while, I bet they've gone through this kind of difficulty. Ain't no one following this channel who hasn't gone through this difficulty of realizing that they've been lied to by believers and belief-based authority figures and struggling to deal with that, the implications of that, to move from belief to understanding. Myself included. It's the human game. And of course, when we hear something new, we reframe it in terms of our beliefs. Oh, you're saying that? Well, that's just your belief. No, I'm saying there's a different way other than belief. But that's just your belief, because there's only beliefs. No, I'm saying there's something other than belief. But I'm not there yet. All I know is belief. So I'm going to reinterpret what you're saying as a belief. Or, as she's doing now, you reading the text as it is, that sounds like you're being dogmatic. No, dogmatic is the opposite. Dogmatic is being loyal to beliefs. I'm being true to understanding. They're opposites. But of course, we know why you're reframing it in terms of your worldview. That's why it's the cause of every problem a human has faced. The worst, most tragic problems caused by what you are in right now. If it wasn't so strong as to be able to reinterpret anything different within that scope, it wouldn't be the cause of endless genocide, slaughter, sexism, racism, oppression, capitalism, conservatism, and religion. It wouldn't have the force it does. But we go through it anyway, and we can overcome it, and that's how we learn and build character. So, important to recognize, yes, we've all been through it, and we all continue to go through it, but it's worth it. It's the thing that's worth all of it. If there's a reason for being alive, it's this. Or as Socrates says, the unexamined life ain't worth living. But this one, that's what it's all about.
I'm looking for someone to share in an adventure.
You're a wizard, Harry.
It's the hero's journey, and you're all in the adventure, and you're all wizards, Harrys. So, I had to go through what you're going through, says Joseph. What you are now facing. But go ahead, because it's worth going through. The real question is, what will you do if the way I just reported it is there, literally there? Now, sometimes we talk about the one real question that we have. Because you can say, well, you are in your fate. The script predetermined by that false image of self that you got as you developed a belief without putting it into words to survive, or as a way of surviving your upbringing, because of the way that we allow children to be raised. And even that cognitive capacity to become blindly loyal to tribe leader at the expense of your own self, mind, understanding, freedom, exploration, and growth, even that's an evolved trait because of the unique characteristics that humanity evolved under. Those were the ones before language and reflection that were not eaten by saber-toothed tigers because everything different and outside the cave was bad. But now we have language and reflection, everything different and outside your family clan is bad is racism, is genocide, is MAGA, is conservatism. It's the cause of all problems. So in one sense, humans are very predictable, and your life has been very predictable. But when you run into someone like a Joseph who says, actually, here is a belief that your whole society is based on, Adam and Eve, that your understanding of why women are less than men is based on, the understanding why we have to be slaves is based on, the understanding of what God is based on, the understanding of why it's bad to have knowledge and to seek eternity in enlightenment is based on. And it's all a fucking lie. All of your religious authority figures were lying. Your parents were lying. Your institutions were lying. And their lives were all a giant lie. When someone says, that's the truth, and you can see it for yourself, that's the only real question that you have to answer. Because now you have a question that can take you out of your fate, out of your NPC script, out of your primitive, savage zombie virus. And he is saying, once you read it and you see it's there, what will you do? That's the judge of character. It's not about never being wrong. Everyone has problems. That's why we're here. The people who try and pretend they were never wrong, they are the worst. They're the Donald Trumps of the world. Never made a mistake. The call was a perfect call. Never done anything bad. I'm the perfect boy. The judge of character is, what do you do after you see you were mistaken? Do you correct yourself? Do you correct the course? Do you adjust? By the way, the word amartya, that is translated as sin. You're a bad person for making a mistake. The actual word amartya in Greek means to miss the mark. Do you adjust your aim? So perhaps the real question, the one real question we have to answer, because if you answer, I choose to follow truth, that determines your character, and that determines how your life will be. Will you stay stuck in your problems in this life and beyond, or will you fulfill your purpose, reach your highest excellence? That's the question we have to ask. And Joseph is asking it not to Harry, but to Aaliyah. If you go and see that it is in the book the way I described, are you going to push the implications to your life, the people that you thought actually were wise and actually were loving? Are you willing to see people as they are, see through your images? Or are you going to choose vice, injustice, ignorance, and suffer the consequences of that, both in this lifetime and beyond? The call to adventure, it's called in the hero's journey. When Gandalf says, hey, Hobbit, hey, Frodo, your world is in peril from the orcs and Sauron. Are you going to become Lord of the Rings? When Obi-Wan says to Luke Skywalker, the universe is in peril because of Darth Vader, are you going to become a Jedi? When Hagrid says to Harry Potter,
You're a wizard, Harry.
are you going to choose to become a wizard, which means learning new things, letting go of the old? Or are you going to stay as a foster kid in the staircase of those weird fat family? The heroes, it's the call to adventure, the beginning of the quest. So, that's why we have a channel. Hopefully there'll be people who come across this channel or have friends in their life, like the friends in the chat today, who have themselves come across this channel and can ask a similar question to them. You can use the Adam and Eve story. It's a brilliant one. It's the bedrock of all of the bullshit that we take for granted in our society. And demonstrates that these religious officials, that surely there's nothing wrong with religion, have been lying to us this whole fucking time about the very first story. The whole house of cards comes down. So you could use this as an example to your friends who you might think might have a good head and good heart and might accept that call to their hero's journey. That's called passing on the Dharma. The Dharma is the spiritual teaching. It's a win-win.
Win, 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 win.
Win. So, what will you do, Aaliyah, if you read the text for yourself and find it's literally the way that we described it? She says, I don't really know. Then I can expect you will want to verify it for yourself, won't you? You'll get the book, open it up, look it up, and conclude, right? We can even update it to say, look it up on your phone. You don't even have to get the book. Remember, get the, I think New English is, the most accurate one. Don't get any of these, hey, modern evangelist version, or Trump Bible, or for new young kids, extreme skateboard version. None of that. Because that's just, you're accepting interpretations of interpretations and myths on myths and stories. So, what, will you do that, Aaliyah? Will you look it up? And conclude? Yes, I guess I'll have to now. Oh, wait a minute. Didn't you mention another case where a myth is invented, but taken literally? What's that one? Or shouldn't I ask? So, that seems like a nice break. So we're going to address another myth. Invented, but taken literally, and it looks like Harry is going to enter the fray again, so he might be triggered soon. So that might be a good point to take it. So, to you. Are you going to get the book? Or download it or whatever? Are you going to look it up? Are you going to read it for yourself? And are you going to conclude? I recommend, before you do that, write down what has been your interpretation your whole life of the Adam and Eve story. Write it down. Or explain it to your friend, but better to write it down. Put logos on it. Then look it up. Then conclude. Compare the what you thought it meant with what was really there. And it asks the questions that Joseph asked. Who was at fault? Who was the villain? Was God doing something good or bad? Was he being irrational, or was he being capricious? You might want to look up capricious. I had to do that today. Were they really banished, or were they still in the holy area, just from the garden? And was one of them still in the garden? All that stuff. Now, good luck. And again, share it, because remember the stages that we are developing, the principles of being in this game. Today we talked about use your insights for understanding. We also said, we also demonstrated today, expect the counter attacks from your belief. As our friend, we encouraged our friend to make her art in a higher way, but we said, hey, it's okay. Expect your interpretations or counterattacks from belief. Keep your cool and write them down so you can address them allegorically, making rational those things that block you and not taking them literally. That's midwifery. And of course, we are saying, hey, as you go through this activity with looking up the Adam and Eve story, first, write down what you think it means from your culture and your life that you've lived so far. Then read the text, then compare the two, and then answer those questions that Joseph laid out. And maybe even add your own. What are some other differences that you can see that are significant? And then, what's stage 3? Share those insights and understanding with your friends. That's why we have this channel. That's why we have a community, and you can join the Discord. practice it. Say, hey, call your friend and say, buy me coffee today. And they'll go, what? Why am I buying you coffee? Because there's this interesting thing that I'm going to run you through. The thought experiment. And I'm going to be the one bringing in the understanding. I'm going to be the one leading the questions. All you have to do is bring an open, curious mind and answer honestly. And I think that whole activity is worth a cup of coffee. And then the final stage we have so far in building our principles, if you do reach insights or have enlightenment experiences, keep going. Have another coffee with that person next week. Now, we're also recognizing that as we are learning to read the text through the dialectic, address our own beliefs, as Aaliyah is doing with the Garden of Eden story, through the dialectic, we're also learning a way of practicing this art of dialectic by applying it to our dreams. So this very activity that you can practice on the Adam and Eve story, or apply to the Adam and Eve story, use it on your dreams. So after you wake up, as soon as you wake up, hit the record button, say whatever you can into your audio recording, and then put it away. Later on in the afternoon, write down what you think happened in the dream. Write down what you think the meaning of the dream is. And why. Put it aside. Then go to the audio transcription and find out what elements you missed, or you left out, or you reinterpreted, and then ask the question, what belief must I have been saying that caused me to take the true dream and reinterpret it with a story to fit my imagination of what happened in the dream. Just as the true text of the Adam and Eve story, some story to make it the imagination that you have, what belief must that be saving? So do it with your dreams. So transcribe your dream from memory later on in the afternoon, then look at the audio transcription and compare the two. Just as Joseph asked about some key differences, can you look for key differences between these two? This is part of the dialect. Hey, if we use the dialectic to explore ideas and purify our false beliefs, we might start with, what do you think happened in this day when you had a problem? Then we do the dialectic and we find out what really happened, and we find we have been projecting things onto our experience of our everyday reality to blind us from what is there, to project what isn't there, keeping us stuck in our problems and preventing our development. Same activity. When we're exploring ideas of truth, what do you think beauty and justice is? And then we read these texts that we read to find out the truth of beauty and justice, and how is it different? Same thing. And what false belief is inferred by that difference that you are trying to save without realizing you're trying to save it. So you can apply it to the Adam and Eve story, you can apply it to the highest ideas of beauty and justice and reality and truth. You can apply it to people's everyday experiences in the world, and you can apply it to your dreams. So I encourage the dream one, it's a lot of fun. So we're learning how to use the dialectic because, hey, by the way, remember there are 4 categories of the dialectic? If an idea is, if beauty exists, and if it isn't. If beauty is just a perception, or beauty is in the eye of the beholder, any of that stuff. Definition, demonstration, division, and conclusion, which has a synthesis from the division, and analysis. But also, when you're exploring an idea, you do what it isn't. The same categories, the same 4 categories. What if beauty was just a physical thing? What if there was no logos? What if everything is relative is true? What kind of universe would that be by definition? How would that function? How would it divide up into other steps or categories or elements? This is the proof stage, by the way. And then can you take from those steps or divisions a synthesis into an idea that you can relate back to the definition to make a conclusion? That's analysis. Synthesis into analysis, which gives us the subject in relation to itself, how it functions to another, how that functioning relates to others, which is the proof stage, and then synthesis to create this other, and then analysis means relating that other back to that original self, original definition. So this is another aspect of the dialectic that we are learning and mastering as the art we're here to master, to become rational, to become Hellenic. What do you think the Adam and Eve story meant, and what did it really mean after you read it? What do you think you'd remember your dream to be about in the afternoon? What was it really about? And hey, when you take what it's really about, once you read the real text, before you do your dream analysis, say, what do you think the meaning of the dream is? And then apply the dialectic to go through the drama, allegory, states of mind, simile, objects and people and furniture, metaphor. To see whether the conclusion was a success or failure in terms of your goal. What role did you play? What state of mind were you in when you played that role? And what must be the definition of the self behind all of it that the dream is telling you about? So after you apply those analogy, allegory, metaphor, and simile, and after you apply the dialectic to the drama, have you come up with a different meaning of the dream? And then compare the two. What was same, what was different, and were the differences, so what was same and what was different, and what was the significance of the differences? So, play that game on Adam and Eve, play that game on your memory of the dream, and then when you do your dream analysis, play that game on the difference between your thinking of what it means at the start and after you go through the process. Now, ideally, have a friend, because the friend can ask you the questions because they can help you. Otherwise, you might be projecting your own language and your own interpretation, which is why it's a two-person game. Philosophy isn't a solo quest, it's a two-person or more game. So, maybe you offer to buy the coffee if they guide you through the dream analysis. And it's not their own beliefs or interpretation, they're just following the structure, asking the questions, and we're seeing the logos unfold. We are following the logos. So, are you going to be like Aaliyah? Are you going to find the book, open it up, give it a read, and conclude? Or are you going to choose the path of, should we say it, cowardice? Not become a Jedi and join the dark side? Stay living under the evil stepfamily's staircase like Harry Potter? Stay in the Shire until the orcs destroy everything? What choice are you going to make? And have fun applying it to the same principle to your dreams. Good stuff today. Thank you everyone for joining. You can join the Discord. You can buy me a coffee. Speaking of buying a coffee, you can buy me a coffee. There's a link below. There's a link to the text below. And I hope to see you in the next one. And music today as well for those who are still here and want to hang out and discuss more and listen to music. I'll see you then.